Hey, so I am Savannah Ford, and today I'm going to be talking about animal captivity. And I have very mixed views on animal captivity because there's just so many factors to consider, and so I've chosen a couple and we're going to discuss those. So the first one I want to talk about is domesticated versus wild animals. Domesticated animals are generally used to people or they're more accepting towards people, like a dog or a cat. And we keep those animals in captivity even though we might not see it that way. We're still keeping them close to us. We're keeping them in our houses or in our backyards, and we're keeping them. And so in general, that's keeping them in captivity, even though some people might not agree because, oh, well, they love me, I love them, we have a mutual relationship. Well, that's true, but they're still captive. And the first person I want to address for the counter argument is Dale Jamieson, who believes that we should not keep any animal in captivity because it messes up their diet, it can mess up their way of life, and it can mess up their overall health. And while I can understand where he's coming from and I understand his points, that's not true for all animals. For instance, I really do think that the Dallas Zoo, when they keep their animals in captivity, they try to maintain their health and diet for what it would be in the natural world, and they try to keep up with their exercise and stuff like that. I know that they mentioned how their elephants still get to walk as much as they normally do, and the Dallas Zoo talks about how they were trying to conserve species and research them and educate others. And I do think that that's a good way for us to realize that zoos are beneficial in animal captivity at some point. I'm not saying that I support all zoos. There are zoos that are bad, that do not appreciate their animals and do not treat them well, and those zoos should not be able to keep their animals in captivity, and they need to either set them free or put them back where they came from. When the Australian wildfires hit and a lot of these animals were becoming orphaned because they lost their parents in the fire, it was zoos and research centers that were taking these animals in and trying to help them and make sure that they could be returned to the wild. And so I really want to emphasize that, because even though these animals are being kept captive, they still are going to hopefully be returned to the wild, which is why I'm not completely against animal captivity. Because when you take in an animal and hopefully your idea is to heal it and try to keep it in the best environment possible so that it can adapt whenever you do return it, then you're still keeping it captive, but at the same time you're trying to help it. You don't have any malevolent things with it. You're not trying to make money off of it. I know that the Dodo on Facebook, they show multiple videos of people rescuing animals like groundhogs and birds and stuff like that, wild animals, and they'll take them in and they'll rescue them and they'll heal them and they'll give them their proper diet. And then whenever they're healed or they're better, they'll release them back into the wild. So, a lot of these research centers and zoos are trying to help. They're not trying to be malevolent toward these creatures. And I know that some people argue that animal captivity is okay for smarter species like monkeys and elephants, but I also think that elephants and monkeys are so intelligent that it would be cruel to keep them in zoos just for others to look at. I believe that if it is not for the benefit of the animal to be kept in captivity, then it should not. Because, for instance, I know that M. Salas at Zoo Animal Welfare Education Center believes that bottlenose dolphins breed better in captivity. And that while that might be true, and it's helping their species, that does not mean that we should keep all bottlenose dolphins in captivity. Now, I can understand keeping some for the benefit of their species, but we also need to understand that they probably do want to be wild. Like the orca Tilly in a documentary on Netflix has been documented to actually kill people because he does not like being in captivity, and yet he's still there and he's still being used by, I think it's SeaWorld. And animals like that are very clearly showing signs that they want to be free, it is cruel to keep them in captivity. But at the same time, we need to remember that even though we might not be against these things, that we are still keeping animals in captivity as pets because we believe that they care about us and we love them. Like if you have a dog, a cat, a bird, a hamster, a lizard, those are all pets that we see and that we keep because we do love them and we care about them. And I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm saying that if they can survive on their own, then they should. For instance, I went to a zoo one time and there was an alligator that was albino. Now, if the alligator was in its natural habitat, then it probably wouldn't make it because of how much it would stand out. It probably would either not be able to catch food or It might not be able to survive from a very early age because of its coloration. Now we need to consider that. We need to be like, okay, this animal would be better in captivity because of the fact that it would be beneficial to them. Whenever we're considering animal captivity, we need to consider the animal's welfare and how they would do. If an elephant is injured or a rhino is orphaned because of poaching, we need to first consider, is this better for them? If a rhino is orphaned because of poaching, then we should take them in and try to release them back into the wild when they are better and fully grown. But that doesn't mean keep them forever. If they can't adapt, then we should, but we need to decide their welfare and put their welfare first. And that's what I really think is important to note about animal captivity.